The repo notice was tucked inside Grace Holland's windshield when she came out to the parking lot after school. She saw it immediately, that distinctive yellow paper that meant someone was coming to take away the only thing keeping her life from completely falling apart. Grace stood beside her 2011 Honda Civic in the afternoon September sun, her arms full of student essays she'd planned to grade that evening, and read the notice twice. She had 72 hours to pay $2,400 or the car would be repossessed. After that, good luck getting to work. Good luck getting groceries. Good luck being an adult in rural Nebraska without a vehicle. She was 39 years old. She'd been teaching high school English at Millwood High for 14 years. She'd been a widow for 8 months, and she was about to lose the last piece of independence she had left. Grace folded the notice and put it in her purse. She loaded the essays into her car and drove the 12 miles to her small house on the edge of town, the whole time doing math in her head that didn't work no matter how she arranged the numbers. Her teacher's salary barely covered the mortgage and utilities. Michael's medical bills, even after insurance, had decimated their savings. The life insurance had gone to pay off debt. There was nothing left. She'd already asked for help. Her parents were retired on a fixed income in Florida. Michael's brother had his own family and his own struggles. The bank had given her 3 extensions already and made it clear there wouldn't be a fourth. She was out of options and out of time. That night, Grace sat at her kitchen table with a calculator and a stack of bills and tried to figure out which disaster to postpone. If she skipped the mortgage payment, she could keep the car. But then she'd be behind on the house, and eventually that would collapse too. If she paid the mortgage, she lost the car, which meant she couldn't get to work, which meant she'd lose her job, which meant she'd lose everything anyway. Michael would have known what to do. Michael had always handled the finances, had always been the practical one, while Grace lived in her world of books and poetry and student papers. But Michael was gone, pancreatic cancer, 4 months from diagnosis to death, and Grace was alone with math that didn't add up and choices that weren't really choices. She went to bed that night without deciding anything, just lay there in the dark, in the bed that still smelled like Michael's aftershave because she couldn't bring herself to wash the pillowcases and stared at the ceiling. The next morning, Grace got to school at 7, like always. She had first period prep, which meant she could get coffee from the teacher's lounge and review her lesson plans for the day without anyone asking if she was okay. She wasn't okay, but she was functional, and in the 8 months since Michael died, she'd learned that functional was enough. At 7:45, the school secretary, Janet Morris, knocked on her classroom door. Janet was in her 60s, had worked at Millwood High for 30 years, and knew everything about everyone in town. "Grace? You have visitors." Grace looked up from her gradebook. "Visitors? I don't have a parent conference scheduled." "Not parents. Janet's expression was strange, part confusion, part something else. "You should probably come see for yourself." Grace followed Janet to the main office. Through the front windows, she could see them, motorcycles, at least a dozen, maybe more, parked in the school's circular drive. Men and women in leather vests standing beside them. The vests had patches, a skull with wings, and the words, "Thunder Road MC." Grace's stomach dropped. "What's going on?" "They asked for you specifically. Said they need to talk to Grace Holland." "About what?" "They wouldn't say. Just said it was important." Grace walked to the front entrance on shaking legs. She pushed open the heavy glass doors and stepped outside. The morning air was cool, but the sun was already warm. The bikers turned to look at her, 13 of them, ranging in age from 20s to 60s, all wearing the same patch. A woman stepped forward. She was tall, maybe 50, with silver-streaked dark hair pulled back in a braid, and eyes that were sharp but not unkind. "Grace Holland?" "Yes. Can I help you?" "My name's Diane Russo. I'm president of the Thunder Road Motorcycle Club." She gestured to the others. "These are my brothers and sisters. We heard you're having some trouble with your car." Grace felt her face go hot. "I don't know what you're talking about. Ma'am, we're not here to embarrass you. We're here to help." Diane pulled a folded piece of paper from her vest. "One of our members works at the bank. He saw your name come up for repossession. He knows you teach here, knows you lost your husband recently. He thought maybe you could use some support." "That's a violation of banking privacy," Grace said automatically. because she didn't know what else to say. It is, Diane agreed, and he's aware of that, but he's also aware that sometimes rules matter less than people, and you're people who matter. Grace looked around at the bikers, at their serious faces and crossed arms. Students were starting to arrive, buses pulling into the lot, cars dropping off teenagers who immediately pulled out their phones to record the scene. The principal, Robert Chen, was walking toward them from the parking lot, looking concerned. "I appreciate the thought," Grace said quietly, "but I can't accept charity, especially not from strangers, and especially not in front of my students." "It's not charity," said another biker, a man in his 40s with a beard and kind eyes. "It's community. We take care of our own around here. I'm not one of yours. I don't even know you." "You teach here," Diane said. "You taught my nephew 2 years ago, Jason Russo. You stayed after school every Tuesday for a month to help him pass his senior English final so he could graduate. You didn't have to do that. You did it because you gave a damn." Grace remembered Jason. Quiet kid, struggled with reading, worked nights at his family's restaurant. She'd seen him putting in effort and getting nowhere, so she'd helped. That's what teachers did. "That was just my job," Grace said. "No," Diane replied firmly. "Your job is to teach from 8 to 3. Staying late on your own time to help a kid who was failing? That's something else. That's caring about people more than your paycheck." She paused. "Jason graduated because of you. Got into community college. He's studying to be a nurse now. You changed his life. So when we heard you were in trouble, we decided to return the favor." Principal Chen arrived, slightly out of breath. "Miss Holland? Is everything all right?" "Everything's fine, Mr. Chen. These people were just—" "We're here to help Ms. Holland with her vehicle situation," Diane said, addressing the principal directly. "We understand she's facing repossession. We'd like to take care of it." Chen's eyebrows went up. He looked at Grace, who was staring at her shoes, then back at Diane. "That's very generous, but perhaps this conversation should happen somewhere more private. The students are arriving and—" "No," Diane interrupted. "Actually, we want the students to see this. Want them to understand that when someone in this community needs help, people show up. Want them to know their teacher matters." More students were gathering now, forming a loose crowd. Grace could hear whispers, could see phones pointed at them. She wanted to disappear into the ground. One of the bikers, a younger man with tattoos covering his arms, stepped forward. "Miss Holland? I'm Travis Martinez. You taught my sister Rosa 3 years ago. She was in foster care, bouncing between homes, failing everything. You got her into the after-school writing program, helped her apply for scholarships. She's at UNL now, studying journalism." "I remember Rosa," Grace said softly. "She was talented." "She was lost," Travis corrected. "You found her. You gave her direction. You gave her hope." He pulled an envelope from his vest. "This is from Rosa." She heard what was happening and wanted to contribute. Another biker spoke up, a woman in her 30s. "My son's in your third period class, Jeremy Walker. He's dyslexic. You've been working with him on audiobooks and alternative assignments so he doesn't fall behind. You spent your planning period yesterday recording yourself reading The Great Gatsby out loud so he could follow along." "That's just differentiated instruction," Grace protested. Any teacher would tell him to try harder or go to the resource room," the woman interrupted gently. "You actually helped. You saw him struggling and you did something about it." One by one, the bikers shared stories. Students Grace had helped, families she'd impacted, small kindnesses she'd extended without thinking twice. She'd stayed late to help kids with college essays. She'd bought supplies with her own money for students who couldn't afford them. She'd written recommendation letters and made phone calls and advocated for teenagers who had no one else in their corner. She'd just been doing her job, or so she'd thought. "Teachers like you are why some of us made it," Diane said. "Why we graduated. Why we didn't give up. Why we became something other than statistics." She gestured to the gathered bikers. "We were all kids once. Kids who needed someone to give a damn, and someone did. So now we give a damn back." She handed Grace a large envelope. "There's $3,000 in there, covers your car payment, and gives you a buffer for next month. Your car stays yours. You keep getting to work. You keep teaching. You keep changing lives." Grace held the envelope with shaking hands. "I can't accept this." "Yes, you can," said an older biker with gray hair and a weathered face, because it's not about charity or pity. It's about recognizing value. You've given this community more than you know. Time for the community to give back. The student crowd had grown. Grace could see Jeremy Walker in the back, tears streaming down his face, could see Rosa Martinez's foster brother, whom she'd also taught, could see Jason Russo, Diane's nephew, standing with his mother. Jason pushed through the crowd. "Miss Holland? I heard what was happening. I'm the one who told my aunt. I work part-time at the bank, and I saw your account." He looked guilty. "I know I shouldn't have said anything, but I couldn't let you lose your car, not after everything you did for me." Grace's vision blurred. "Jason, you could lose your job for that." "Already got fired," he said cheerfully. "Worth it. You gave me a future. Least I could do was help protect yours." "Oh, Jason." Grace didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "You shouldn't have." "Actually, he's not fired," said a new voice. A man in a suit walked up, Tom Bradford, president of First National Bank. He looked at Jason. "You're on probation. 1 month. You violated privacy policies, but you did it for the right reasons. And frankly, if Ms. Holland had lost her car because none of us noticed she was struggling, that would be a bigger problem." He turned to Grace. "Ms. Holland, I knew your husband. Michael helped me when I was going through a rough patch years ago. Lent me money when no bank would. Told me to pay it back when I could. I never forgot that." He pulled out his own envelope. "The bank can't officially help, but I can personally. There's another 1,000 in there. Consider it paying back a debt." Grace couldn't speak, could barely see through her tears. The principal was crying. Janet the secretary was crying. Half the students were crying. The bikers stood solid and strong, witnesses to something that felt bigger than money or cars or practicality. "Why?" Grace finally managed. "Why would you all do this?" "Because you matter," Diane said simply. "Because teachers matter. Because the people who show up every day and give a damn about kids they didn't give birth to deserve to be protected when they're struggling. Because you'd do it for any of us if you could." She smiled. "And because bikers aren't what people think. We're community. We're family. We take care of our own. And Miss Holland, you're ours." The students started clapping, slowly at first, then building. Soon the entire crowd of teenagers was applauding, and some were shouting, "We love you, Ms. Holland," and "Best teacher ever," and things that made Grace cry harder. The bikers stayed for another hour. They talked to students, posed for photos, answered questions about their bikes and their club. They explained that the Thunder Road MC was dedicated to community service, charity rides, veteran support, protecting vulnerable people. They weren't the criminals people imagined when they thought of motorcycle clubs. They were nurses and mechanics and bank tellers and construction workers who happened to ride together and believe in taking care of their own. By the time they left, the entire school had heard the story. Teachers came out of their classrooms, the local newspaper arrived. Someone had already posted video to social media with the caption, "Local bikers save beloved teacher's car." This is what community looks like. Grace taught her classes that day in a daze. Students who normally didn't participate asked questions. Kids who usually slept through English were engaged. Everyone wanted to talk about what had happened, about what it meant, about how it felt to see their teacher protected like that. In third period, Jeremy Walker raised his hand. "Miss Holland, why didn't you tell us you were struggling? We would have helped." Grace looked at this kid she'd spent hours helping, this dyslexic teenager who worked so hard to keep up, and felt something crack open in her chest. "Because I'm supposed to be the strong one. I'm supposed to help you, not the other way around." "That's stupid," said a girl in the back row. Sarah Chen, the principal's daughter, straight A student, usually too cool to engage. "Everyone needs help sometimes, even teachers, especially teachers probably. You do so much for us. Why shouldn't we do stuff for you?" "Yeah," Jeremy added, "you're always telling us it's okay to ask for help, that it's not weakness, but then you don't follow your own advice." Grace smiled through fresh tears. "You're right. I'm sorry. I should have asked." "You shouldn't have had to ask," Sarah said firmly. "People should have noticed. We should have noticed. You've been sad all year, and we just didn't do anything." "I'm okay," Grace started, but the class groaned. "You're not okay," said another student. "Your husband died. That's not okay. But you keep showing up and teaching us and helping us and pretending you're fine. That's exhausting." Grace sat on the edge of her desk, abandoning the day's lesson plan entirely. "You're right. I'm not okay. I've been struggling. Michael handled all our finances, and I'm not good at it. The medical bills were overwhelming. I'm behind on everything. I've been choosing between food and gas and hoping something would give." She looked at her students. "But I didn't want you to worry. You've got your own problems." "We've also got eyes," Sarah said. "We see you, Miss Holland. We see how hard you work, how much you care, how you stay late and come early and answer emails at midnight. You think we don't notice, but we do." "You're like the best teacher in this school," added Jeremy. "Probably the best teacher I've ever had. You make me feel like I'm not stupid just because I can't read normal." Grace was full on crying now. Professional boundaries be damned. These kids, these teenagers she'd been teaching and helping and worrying about, were telling her they saw her. They valued her. She mattered. That afternoon, after the final bell, Grace walked to her car that she still owned, that wasn't being repossessed, and found it covered in sticky notes. Hundreds of them. Students had written messages: "Thank you for everything. Best teacher ever. You saved me. You matter. We love you, Miss Holland. Don't ever leave us." Grace stood in the parking lot and read every single note through tears that wouldn't stop. When she finally got in her car, she found more notes on the dashboard, the steering wheel, the rearview mirror. The last one, in Jeremy's messy handwriting, said, "You told me I was smart enough. That changed everything. Thank you." She drove home with $3,000 in cash from bikers she barely knew, $1,000 from a banker paying back a debt to her dead husband, and hundreds of sticky notes from students telling her she mattered. She sat in her driveway and cried for 20 minutes before she could go inside. That night, Grace went online and paid her car payment in full. She put the rest of the money in savings, a buffer against the next disaster, the next impossible choice. Then she sat at her kitchen table and wrote 13 thank you notes to the members of the Thunder Road MC. She didn't know what else to do, didn't know how to express what they'd given her. It wasn't just the money, though that was life-saving. It was the reminder that she wasn't alone, that people saw her struggling and cared enough to help, that the kindness she'd extended to students over 14 years had created ripples she'd never seen. The story spread. Local news covered it, then regional news. Within a week, the video of the bikers at the school had been viewed 2 million times. Teachers from across the country reached out to Grace, sharing their own stories of struggling in silence, of choosing between bills, of being exhausted from caring so much. The Thunder Road MC was flooded with interview requests. Diane handled them all with the same message: teachers are undervalued and underpaid. They give everything to our kids and get nothing back. When we see one struggling, we help. That's not heroic, that's just decent. But people thought it was heroic. Donations started coming in, not just for Grace, but for other teachers in Millwood. Someone set up a crowdfunding campaign for the school's classroom supply budget. A local business owner established a grant fund for teachers facing financial emergencies. Grace's story became a catalyst. School boards across Nebraska started conversations about teacher salaries and support systems. Parents organized appreciation events. Communities started paying attention to the people shaping their children's lives. But for Grace, the most important change was smaller and more personal. She learned to ask for help. When she was struggling with her lesson plans or her grief or her finances, she reached out to the principal, to other teachers, to her students' families, to the Thunder Road MC, who adopted her as an honorary member and checked in regularly. She learned that strength wasn't handling everything alone. It was admitting when you needed support and letting people give it. 3 months after the bikers showed up, Grace attended her first Thunder Road charity event, a fundraiser ride for the local food bank. She rode in the support vehicle, not on a bike, but the club treated her like family. They introduced her to other teachers they'd helped, other community members they'd supported. She learned that what they'd done for her wasn't special or unique. It was what they did. "We call it paying attention," Diane explained over coffee at a diner after the ride. "Most people are too busy or too distracted to notice when someone's drowning. We make it our business to notice, to see who's struggling, to show up before it's too late." "Why?" Grace asked. "Why do you care so much?" Diane was quiet for a moment. I was a single mom once, working 2 jobs, raising 3 kids, barely keeping my head above water. I was about to lose my apartment when my neighbors found out. They organized a fundraiser, collected rent money, saved us. Her eyes were distant. I never forgot what that felt like. Being seen, being helped, being told I mattered. So now I do it for others. We all do. The club is your way of giving back. The club is my family. We ride together, sure, but more importantly, we watch out for each other. And we watch out for the community, because that's what families do. Grace understood. The Thunder Road MC wasn't really about motorcycles. It was about belonging, about mutual aid, about refusing to let people fall through the cracks just because the system didn't care. In December, Grace's students organized a surprise for her. They'd all chipped in. Some gave $1, some gave $5, one gave $20, and collected enough to buy her a new winter coat. Her old one was 10 years old and falling apart. She'd been wearing it anyway because she couldn't justify the expense of replacing it. Jeremy Walker presented it to her during third period, his face red with embarrassment and pride. "We know you help us all the time. We wanted to help you back. It's not much, but..." "It's everything," Grace said, hugging the coat to her chest. "Thank you. All of you." "Also," Sarah Chen added, "we made you this." She handed over a binder. Inside were letters from every student Grace had taught that semester. Letters about what her class meant to them, what she'd taught them beyond English, how she'd changed their lives. Grace read them through tears, again. She cried so much these days, but they were different tears than the ones she'd cried in the months after Michael died. These were tears of gratitude, of connection, of realizing she wasn't alone. That Christmas, Grace was invited to the Thunder Road MC's annual toy drive. She volunteered to help wrap presents and organize donations. The club raised enough to provide Christmas for 60 families in Millwood who were struggling. Grace watched the bikers, these tough-looking men and women in leather and patches, carefully wrapping dollhouses and action figures, writing encouraging notes to kids they'd never met. And she understood something fundamental. People weren't what they looked like. Bikers weren't scary. Teachers weren't superhuman. Everyone was just trying to survive, to find meaning, to make the world slightly better than they found it. Jason Russo showed up at the toy drive with his girlfriend and baby nephew. He pulled Grace aside. "I got accepted to nursing school, full program. Start in January." "Jason, that's wonderful. Couldn't have done it without you. You believing I was smart enough to graduate, to go to college, to be something? That changed my whole trajectory." He paused. "I know I got in trouble at the bank for telling my aunt about your situation, but I'd do it again. You saved me. Let me save you back." "You didn't save me, Jason." "The club did. I gave them the information. They did the rest, but it started with me seeing you needed help and refusing to look away." He smiled. "You taught me that, to pay attention, to give a damn, to show up for people." Grace hugged him. "You're going to be an incredible nurse." "I'm going to be the kind of nurse who notices when people are struggling, who helps even when it's complicated, who doesn't look away." He pulled back. "Like you." The school year continued. Grace kept teaching, kept helping students, kept grading papers at midnight and answering emails and advocating for teenagers who needed someone in their corner. But she also kept asking for help when she needed it, kept letting people know when she was struggling, kept accepting support from the community that had shown up when she was drowning. Her finances slowly stabilized. The car payment became manageable. She learned to budget and plan and handle the practical things Michael had always managed. She attended grief counseling at the community center. She made friends with other widows and teachers and Thunder Road members. She was still sad sometimes, still missed Michael with an ache that didn't fade, but she was functioning, more than functioning. She was living, really living, not just surviving. In May, at the end-of-year assembly, Principal Chen called Grace to the stage. She thought he was going to present her with the standard Teacher of the Year plaque the school gave out annually. Instead, he announced that the community had come together to establish the Michael Holland Memorial Scholarship, a full-ride scholarship to community college for a Millwood High graduate pursuing teaching or nursing. Michael Holland believed in helping people, Chen explained to the packed auditorium. His wife, Grace, has carried on that legacy every single day in her classroom. This scholarship honors both of them, and it's funded by donations from the Thunder Road Motorcycle Club, local businesses, and hundreds of community members who wanted to make sure the Holland name continues to mean something in this town. Grace couldn't speak. The students gave her a standing ovation. The first recipient of the scholarship would be Jason Russo, who would be starting nursing school in the fall. After the assembly, Diane Russo found Grace in the hallway. "You doing okay?" "I don't know what I am," Grace admitted. "Overwhelmed, grateful. Still a little shocked that all this happened because I had a repo notice on my windshield." "It didn't happen because of the repo notice. It happened because you're the kind of person who stays late to help students, who spends her own money on supplies. Who gives a damn?" Diane smiled. "The repo notice was just what made us notice you needed help. But you've been worth helping all along." "I still can't believe you all did that. Showed up at the school, made it public, gave me money." "We wanted everyone to see," Diane said. "Wanted your students to understand that teachers matter, that their Ms. Holland was valuable, that when someone's struggling, you show up. You don't wait for them to ask. You just help. You changed my life. You changed dozens of kids' lives. We just evened the score." The last day of school, Grace stood in her empty classroom after the final bell and looked at the walls, covered in student work and inspirational posters and photos from the year. She thought about Michael, about how he'd be proud of her for making it through this impossible year, about how he'd probably laughed that a motorcycle club had saved her car. She thought about the bikers who'd shown up when she needed them most, about Jason and Rosa and Jeremy and Sarah and all the other students who'd taught her that asking for help wasn't weakness, about a community that had proven people cared even when she'd felt completely alone. Her phone buzzed. Text from Diane. "Charity ride Saturday. You're riding in the support vehicle. Don't even think about saying no." Grace smiled and typed back, "Wouldn't miss it." She locked up her classroom and walked out to her car that she still owned, that had carried her through an impossible year. The sticky notes were long gone, but she'd saved every single one in a box at home. Sometimes she read them when the grief was too heavy, when she felt too alone, when she needed to remember that she mattered. The sun was setting as she drove home, painting the Nebraska sky in shades of orange and gold. She passed the bank where Jason worked, the diner where Diane's family had their restaurant, the community center where she attended grief counseling. She passed all the places that made up her life in Millwood, this small town that had caught her when she was falling. That had refused to let her go under. That had shown her what community really meant. Grace pulled into her driveway and sat for a moment, looking at the house she'd shared with Michael, the house that was still hers because people had helped, because bikers had shown up, because students had cared, because a community had decided she was worth saving. She got out of the car and went inside, made dinner, graded the last batch of essays, planned for next year's classes, lived her life. And on Saturday, she rode with the Thunder Road MC to a charity event for struggling families, watched bikers collect donations and organize support and pay attention to people who were drowning, watched them throw ropes the way they'd thrown her one. She understood now. This was what mattered, not being perfect or having all the answers or handling everything alone, but showing up, helping when you could, letting people know they weren't invisible, being the kind of person who noticed when others were struggling and refused to look away. Grace Holland had spent 14 years being that person for her students, and when she'd needed it most, the community had been that person for her. That was the story. That was what the bikers had given her. Not just money or a car payment or financial stability, but the profound understanding that she wasn't alone, that she mattered, that the life she was living, teaching teenagers, grading papers, showing up every day, was valuable enough to protect. And that was worth more than she could ever repay. But she'd try anyway. She'd keep teaching, keep helping students, keep paying attention to who was struggling, keep throwing ropes to people who were drowning, because someone had to. And the Thunder Road MC had taught her it might as well be her. The tradition continued. Every year after that, when school started in August, the Thunder Road MC showed up at Millwood High, not because Grace needed saving anymore, but to remind students that their teachers mattered, that the people shaping their lives were valuable, that when someone was struggling, you helped. They'd park their bikes in the circular drive, walk into the school, and have coffee with the teachers. Answer questions, talk to kids about community and service, and paying attention to people who needed help. It became part of the school culture, an understanding that teachers were human, that they struggled, that they deserved support, that asking for help was okay. Grace Holland taught for another 15 years at Millwood High. She never got rich, never stopped worrying about bills, never stopped missing Michael, but she never felt alone again. Because she'd learned the most important lesson anyone could learn. You didn't have to handle everything by yourself. You could ask for help. You could let people care. You could be vulnerable and still be strong. And sometimes, when you least expected it, a motorcycle club would show up and remind you that you mattered, that your life had value, that the work you did every day, the invisible, exhausting, essential work of teaching, was worth protecting. That was the gift the Thunder Road MC had given her. Not money, not a car payment, but the knowledge that she wasn't invisible, that someone was paying attention, that she mattered. And that changed everything.